You guys, it's Keffi here. Welcome to my track breakdown of Bodywork, which is one of my records on Toolroom Trax. It came out about a year ago now, almost a year to the date, and I'm finally getting round to doing some content on this. So, I thought it'd be really useful for you guys to see that you don't need to have these crazy productions and crazy mixes and masters to get released on Toolroom. It's all about the idea that you have within the DAW. Is that going to resonate with the team, the A&Rs? And the DJs that are inevitably going to be playing it out. Now, this was a track that is obviously on Toolroom Tracks. It got played at Elro by Basti and Bucks in front of thousands and thousands of people, which was a huge moment for me. It got played at Radio 1 Big Weekend by Danny Howard, which was a massive bucket list thing for me. It was in my original vision as well, which I'll talk about at the start of this. So it did pretty well. Yeah, I thought it would be valuable to run you guys through this project, might give you guys some ideas of what to do with your records as well, and to show you that things do not have to be complicated. Like this record, it's fairly simple. It's got a good vocal hook, a melodic hook, some solid drums, and a really simple bass line. And the arrangement, it totally makes sense as well. Just looking at it here, it was a while ago that I wrote this, and now opening up the session here, I'm like, oh, I see exactly why I did these decisions. And I think one of the things that is so important with writing a record is having an idea before you actually get into the DAW. I had so many ideas for this record before I started it, and I think that's why, it was one that I got across the line quite quickly. It was one that ended up getting signed as well. I think, when you have an idea of where you want that to be played, whether it's in a venue, whether it's on a radio station, whether it's by an artist, it's going to help you make these informed decisions where you can envision where each of these things will be placed. And, some of your best work can be done just, on the fly. We've all made a good record that we've just done in the spur of the moment, chucked together a few loops, and then it just happened to work. But I think having a vision for your record is so, so important. And that's exactly what I had with this record. What I wanted to do was create a track that had sort of the energy of my both tracks on my first EP together, on my Infatuate EP. So the records are called Infatuate and Toledo. Infatuate is this it's quite a unique record, to be honest. It's really dark. It has this proper moment with this LFO percussion sound, and then it goes into the drop. And then Toledo is quite a standard, like tribal tech house, big room style record. And I wanted something that merged this darkness and this tribal feel as well. And I think when you listen to Bodywork at the end, it's done exactly that. It's kind of like it's almost slap bang in the middle of the two records. And I knew that if I replicated some of the energy of these two tracks combined, then the record might do okay. And that's exactly what happened. On top of that, I wanted a record that almost felt a little bit accessible and could potentially be something that would maybe even get played on like a Radio 1 nighttime show, not dance anthems, but by your likes of, Danny Howard that's playing sort of maybe some more of these underground records as well. I think it's quite rare for something on touring tracks to get played on shows like this. Almost never, but I was like, I'm gonna try and do it anyway, and that's where the vocal hook came in because it's really easy to sing, pretty accessible, you could say. So I had this vision of something that was dark, a little bit clubby, had a couple of hooks, semi-accessible, and I had a few references that I could pull in as well. So all of these things are stacking on top of each other, and I'm thinking, I've got an idea. I know some tracks that I can kind of merge together to get me closer to that vision as well. And I think if you have all these things, you have your sounds kind of ready to go, the track almost kind of writes itself. So let's dive in and you guys can let me know what you think. Now, the logical thing to do here is start off with my drums. It's how I start every single record that I do. When I made this record, I was in a period of writing. I start with my kick, my clap, my hat, going off the back of a reference, and then I build my percussion around it. So that's how I made it for this record. And nowadays, though, I actually build my percussion loop first and then put my kick, clap, and hat underneath it. So, everyone does it their own. Some people start with vocal. I start with percussion now. It's always been the thing that my ears have been drawn to when I'm writing music. I always wanted to be a drummer as well. I played guitar for 16, 17 years. I always asked for drums for Christmas, but for some reason my parents never gave me them. I wonder why. But I've always been drawn to percussion, and I guess that's why my music sounds the way that it does. So I had a few references. I'm not going to play them for copyright reasons, but it was Shake by Be More, Where You At by To Be Honest, Both of those, funnily, were on Black Book Records back in the day. You can listen to them and you'll probably hear the influences in there. Jump and Shout, Eric Haggleton remix, which is kind of where the vocal vibe came from. And then a few other ones like Work by Honey Dijon, a few random ones kind of in that area. But I basically pulled in all these reference tracks and thought, how can I merge them all together? Now, I'm not going to bore you and go through the kick clap hat because I feel like that's just like not very entertaining, but all of them are literally from the same sample pack. They're all from the kicks, the claps, the hats are all from Phantom Rumba 2. So pretty solid pack that was feeling at the time. I think the Phantom packs are pretty solid for sort of like that stronger tech house vibe that you want. So would recommend those packs. But you've got a punchy kick, snappy but slightly delicate clap. Sounds really nice and crisp. And then two hats here, one that just starts off the record, and then the second one that just lifts the energy. Pretty standard thing to do. Some people just stick with one hat and then might use an envelope or a transient shaper to sort of shorten it at the start and then open it up later on. But that's another way that you can do it. I had two different shakers, one that sort of runs throughout the whole record, and then a second one here that just adds a bit more energy later on in the record. Because you'll see as this record goes on, so much of it is to do with just keeping the same elements running, but just dropping things in and out. That keeps the energy going throughout. Now, with records on Toolroom, they love to have hooks within the record, as I'm sure so many producers that are trying to release on Toolroom will know that. I like to write hooks within multiple different sections of my song, be that the melodic, the vocal, and then I try and write a little bit of a hook within the percussion as well, and that's exactly what I did here. It's a pretty busy conga groove with a hit on, I mean, every 16th note really, but you can hear that it's sort of like, you can sing the melody of the percussion. Dun, 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 da, da, dun. And you can see it's literally, it's two different loops that are playing together, but they're playing off each other as well. And then in some of the gaps, I've added some additional hits in there as well. That just makes it feel like a live drummer is actually playing them. So it's a pretty sick groove. I was really, really happy with that when I eventually wrote it. And then I have these little sort of perks that are, you can see that they're panned, some left, some right, some not as far as the other. And that was an idea that I took from my reference track at the time, or one of the reference tracks that I said, where they had all these sort of like jittery sounds and percussions in the stereo field, and it just made the track feel really exciting and high energy. So I just added that into my record. It just adds some excitement within that stereo field, you know, as a listener. You're not really going to hear that too much in the club, but just something additional to add in there. To be honest, if I was writing this again, I'd probably have less sounds in here. Like, now when I'm writing drums, honestly, I'll have like 6, 7 channels. How many do I have in here? Like with all the fills and everything, there's like almost 30 channels altogether. I probably have less in there. You know, it would give me the opportunity to push the loudness a little bit more, having less sounds in there that are sort of overlapping with each other. But that's the way it was when I wrote it, and you're getting to see that now. I have 2 different cowbells in here as well. This one goes throughout the whole record. And then I have a little secondary one that's a little bit more delicate, and they kind of play off each other. And then when you have all the percussion together in the records, it just kind of feels like you've got this live, like almost like Brazilian percussion band playing everything together. It's like an orchestra of all this percussion. So I remember when I wrote this groove, I was absolutely buzzing with it, and to be honest, I still absolutely love it, and I'm proud of it for this day. In terms of reverbs, I just have it on the cowbell, on the congas, because, you know, you don't want to be putting reverb on absolutely every single channel, drowning the track in reverb, making it sound extremely far back. Just a little bit of room reverb on a few different elements within the track that sort of gives it that space and depth is all you really need. I've also got all these little sort of like vocal chops and tribally tongue rolls and stuff that also fill out the record. Just a ton of them that, and just add this extra vibe within the record that I was going for. What I was doing at this point is I was probably listening to my references thinking, oh, what do they have there? Do they have some vocal chops? Do they have some, you know, panning perky bits as well? And then just sort of like combining them all together to make that one record. When I sent this off to Toolroom and it ended up getting signed and we were kind of like listening to what could be tweaked, this little vocal here, I had it really low in the mix initially, and then Danny, who's the head of Toolroom Trax, A&R as well, that all the music goes through, he suggested that that sound should actually be a little bit louder, so that's something that his ears picked up, and he really enjoyed that on the record, and, it was kind of sitting quite low before, almost like it was just like this lower texture. He brought it out, and it almost became like another secondary, a third, fourth hook within the record, which is nice because it kind of like bounces off the groove as well, so I think you hit a fair point, and I guess that's what happens when, you're signing tracks on the labels, and sometimes A&Rs do give you a bit of advice, and sometimes you don't want to listen to it because you're precious with the record, but sometimes you got to listen, and their ideas really will, bring your record to the best it could possibly be. Now, this bass line I think is quite unique. A lot of the time when people have a tom drum bass line, it's kind of just that syncopated dun 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 rhythm, whereas this is, I'm not too sure why I wrote it like this. I guess it kind of gives it this like jungly rumble feel that just matches the vibe of the percussion as well. So hear the bass line here, or the tom bass line. And you hear, rather than it just being dun 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 dun, it gives it a different vibe. Almost adds another layer to that thing that I was saying at the percussion, where it feels like you've got this full band playing. So it's another thing, you're just like adding context and context and context with all the decisions that you're making within the record. And then this other bass that I have in it, HS Boomer, I actually saw, it was back in the day, I saw Cruzy in his Latin House Toolroom course write a bass line, or he wrote with a tom bass line and then he added HS Boomer just as this like extra sort of tonal deep layer. So I essentially just did the same thing and just stuck to the record. Bit cleaner than the toms that you've got in there, and it just gives it that extra bit of oomph. And then down here below, you've essentially got the high pass channels. I like to have them on two separate channels. Now, the main melody of the record, I think, is one of the unique points of this record as well, and probably the catchiest point, you could argue, ahead of the vocal. Now, this was another area where I had an idea when I was going into the record that what I wanted the main melody to be. If you've ever watched Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, I kind of took the idea from that dun 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 melody that so many people know, and it's a bit iconic, to be honest. What I really liked there was, it was the melody that it played. It was sort of the way that the notes moved and the interval between the notes in that Tokyo Drift thing, and I wanted to create something that had that similar vibe of the Tokyo Drift record. So what I did, so I think with the Tokyo Drift record it just goes, and mine is pretty similar. Same notes, but I think it's a different pitch as well. I think what I was doing is I was playing that actual melody with this sound. I moved it down a few tones and then essentially shifted it along a few notes and came up with the Bodywork melody. So that's where the main inspiration for the melody actually came from. The sound is from a Toolroom Trax, Sound of Toolroom Trax sample pack. I believe the record that the sound is actually from is from Tattoo by Devotions, which is an absolute banger. Go and check it out. But yeah, there's another one where I had this idea. So, you can see that I had so many ideas for this record. I knew who I wanted to play it. I knew the radio that I wanted to be on. I knew sort of the combination of vibes and tracks that I wanted to be of. And I already had a melody before I started the record already. So the track was already written in my head before I'd even started it. The vocal hook is pretty simple, just a repetitive vocal. Work that body, shake that body, work that body. So catchy. Again, a vibe that I pulled in from my references, speaking about, I think it was working and like body and moving and all those kind of things. So there's your vocal. What I did do here is I added this, which is essentially a guitar plugin in called Big Bad Bass. I did it on the vocal on Toledo, and I thought it sounded really cool on this as well. So without it, it sounds like this.
Work that body.
And with it,
Work that body.
adds so much more grit and liveliness and energy to the vocal. So I thought it was a really cool addition there. Got a bit of pitch shifting on it as well. Elastic Pitch plugin is absolutely magical. If you're ever looking for a pitch plugin, that is your one. It's super, super clean. Whether you went up or down, definitely recommend. Now, the arrangement, in its essence, it's a really, really simple record. The intro kind of goes without saying. You can see that there's nothing too crazy going on there. You've got 16 bars of sort of a main intro, then you've got the kick and bass coming in, a little bit where it sort of like teases the melody and vocal, and then you drop down into this moment, which was kind of different for a record for me. In Infatuate, I had this LFO sound that sort of goes up into that final drop, and I just wanted to chuck it at the start of the record instead. So I just decided to do that. It's almost like something out of a horror film. There's a lot of tension there with sort of like the pitch shifting up with elastic pitch. You have the pancake plugin as well, where it's sort of like panning side to side in your ears. And then you have a ton of delay that's also going on here, bit of reverb as well. You can see that the delay plugin sort of automates up and it sort of rises and rises and rises. And then another element that's in that intro section to create some tension, it's a great thing to do, is just add a really high string into the record. If in doubt, add a high string. Got this air atmosphere that's in there as well. And then there's another way that, you know, I sort of wanted to seek that vocal in rather than it coming out of nowhere, was just having that what. So essentially I got a little bit of a vocal chop from the vocal, chucked it into the sampler. So a lot of people in Logic don't actually know how to create that sort of LFO speeding up and slowing down sound. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your note or sound that you want to repeat into a sampler that's been dropped in there. And then you're going to go to this little section above. You're going to add a note repeater. And then depending on how much you want it to repeat, you essentially move the repeats up and down. You can see I like to have it at 99 because it's quite a long section and you don't want to be placing tons and tons of different MIDI regions. So 99 repeats for me. And then what you're going to do is you're going to want to automate this delay section up top with a note. So you can see it's automating to change speed here. Really sick way to create tensions, but I think I went through a phase a few years ago where it was kind of getting overused. So I don't know if it's cool anymore to do that, but it's a really useful tool that you can use to, you know, create tension within your record. So the main challenge when I was writing this record was actually this midsection. The breaks kind of wrote themselves, and especially this bit here, it just sort of, as soon as I arranged the record, this bit just came together. And getting this midsection here to sort of maintain the energy whilst using still the vocal and the melodic hook as the sort of like the main elements was something that I probably struggled with more than anything else in the record. Because all you're thinking is, how can I use just these two elements but keep it interesting? Kind of added a few elements in there as well, but you'll see that as I explain it. The first 8 is really, really standard, you know, standard kind of first tech house drop is dropping in with sort of no vocal or just a bit of the vocal. So just grooving that main melodic hook going on there in the first 8. Then in the second 8, bring the vocal back in and then add a ride in there. That ride is going to, you know, give you a little bit more energy with that top end energy.
Work that body, shake that body, work that body, that body, that body, work that.
then that third 8, we're gonna be dropping the vocal out again and then kinda making it a vocal effects section that kinda creates this floatiness. I've added in an additional percussion in here as well. Just such subtle tweaks to the record, almost that you can't really hear it changing. And then in this final 8, what I did was I dropped the ride out and then replaced that with a cowbell. I think a way of, sort of raising the energy again in a house record is a double offbeat cowbell can really sort of like give a similar effect as a ride. I feel like, the ride is hitting on the offbeat as well, isn't it? So the cowbell is doing a really similar thing, but you're also changing that at the same time. And then at the same time, we're filtering the vocal back in to sort of reach this climax at the end of that first drop section.
Work that body, shake that body.
Before you drop down into that main break. So that was something that, I tried so many different vocal variations within here, different, you know, main melody variations as well. I think I took out this main melody and then added in that LFO melody. I tried so many different things and eventually this is the one that ended up sticking. This break section here, pretty standard, drops down, you've just got the bass, some of the percussion and the kick.
Work that body, shake that body.
Really sort of dark and deep section of the record. Originally I had it like this, so I had this percussion rolling through. But again, that's something that as the final record was released, we decided just to kind of strip out some of those drums and keep it like that. I think both work, to be honest, but that's the version that we kept. And then going into the build section, pretty standard. I used a pretty standard. I sort of used that LFO vocal again to sort of like bring in the vocal like I did in the intro section. Just makes the transition a little bit smoother. And then this is just really simple stuff here. Just gradually filtering in the drums, letting some more of the tops in, and then as it comes up, you're taking some of the lows out and then adding them back in as it's going into that drop section. Cutting absolutely everything out to create this real hands in the air moment, apart from the vocal, the main melody hook, and then a snare clap, of course, is going to create a ton of tension. I actually have both a snare and a clap on this channel. I'll put it there. Similar sounds, really snappy sounds. But yeah, that all sort of like drops out and you're creating this massive release and moment of tension going into that final drop. I love what happened when I had this main melody here and then it added a ton of delay to it. It creates this really trippy effect within it. Reminds me of like spiders crawling up walls or something like that. Just dropping back into that dry melody again. And that is more or less the record there. This pretty much just copies the same as the first drop, as is often the case in a house record. In terms of my effects, there's honestly nothing exciting going on there. pretty standard risers and downers, reverse sounds. Again, listening to that genre of music, how crazy do those things have to be? Do they work if they're just, nice and simple? If they do, stick with them if you want to do that. In terms of mixing down, this is the mix that Toolroom received from me. So again, you don't need to have some insane mix, to get your record signed. It's really simple what I've done. Decapitator on pretty much every single channel, pushing the sounds as far as they can be pushed, just without going like a little bit too distorted. So there's a tiny bit of crunch and then just pulling back a little bit. And then just EQing the sound as well, taking off the bottoms and tops there. So that was how I sent it to Toolroom. But I did actually ask for us to get a different mix down, which is the one that went out. But I mean, you can hear this record how it is. It sounds decent. So, like I said, you don't need to be doing anything crazy. And then on my drum bus as well, you can see I literally just have the single EQs, which are automating the tops down and then the lows off in sort of like the build sections and transitional periods of the record. There's track spacer on the record, which sort of clears up a little bit of space within the record. A little bit of a cheat code, to be fair. And then I don't know why this isn't loading here, but I had Virtual Mix Rack, which just had some slight compression on everything. And then I had Infinite EQ on the end of the chain, which was like a 3 dB boost at 12K, I think it was, that I had on there. And I kind of just like whack that drum bus chain onto all my drums when I'm writing. So again, nothing too complex. It was all about getting the sound selection right at the start of the record. I do spend a bit of time doing that, making sure that, all the sounds do work, really, really well together and are creating the desired effect that you're aiming for the record. Whether that's a massive sounding record, something that's like short and jittery, choose your sounds depending on that. So there we have it, guys. I just wanted to show you that, you don't need to write something absolutely insane and over the top with, a million things going on to get a release on Toolroom. Just have that vision with the record, have references, have a goal in mind, use hooks because, that's what this whole record was based off as well. That's what they liked at Toolroom. There's nothing too complex about this record. And, it got played at Elro, it got played by Danny Howard, which got aired on Radio 1, and, it got released on Toolroom. So this is my breakdown of Bodywork. Hope you guys enjoyed it.